Have you wondered what would happen if Izuku Midoriya was never quirkless? What if from the moment he opened his eyes as a child, he already had a quirk that shaped his destiny long before One For All ever entered his life? Would he still become the symbol of peace successor? Would Bakugo still push himself to surpass him? And the biggest question of all is pretty simple. How would Hero Society react if the future #1 hero was never powerless in the first place? In this alternate timeline, Deku is born with a quirk similar to Spidey's sense called Insight, a strange ability that lets him read small movements, emotional intent, and energy flow inside living beings. At first, it looks harmless and almost useless, but the more Izuku grows, the more incredible this ability will become. As a child, he's still the same hero fanboy we know. He breaks toys to study their joints, writes pages of hero notes every night, and mutters about battle plans in every classroom. But this time, he's not bullied for being quirkless. Instead, he's bullied because his quirk looks weak. Bakugo still mocks him, still calls him Deku, and still blows up his notebooks. But something important changes. When Bakugo insults him, Izuku quietly studies him with insight and thinks to himself, Kachin always shifts his weight before blasting forward. One day I will use that to beat him. This calm confidence irritates Bakugo much more than fear ever did, and the rivalry begins far earlier. By age 10, insight awakens further. Deku can predict attack patterns, sense pressure points, and read the emotional imbalance of villains on television. He still dreams of becoming a hero, but he knows his body must be strong enough for his mind to keep up. So he spends years training in secret building, stamina, flexibility, and speed. At this point, he understands something that no one else his age understands. A kind heart means nothing if you don't have the strength to protect the people who depend on you. When he meets All Might at 14, everything changes. When the sludge villain attacks, Deku moves through the air with instinct. His quirk activates without thought, and he dodges long enough for All Might to arrive. All Might is actually impressed because Izuku reads the villain openings with almost impossible accuracy. When Deku asks him if someone with a support type ability can be a hero, his determination hits All Might harder than any punch. And then the moment comes. When Bakugo is trapped inside the sludge villain, Deku rushes forward. This time, he uses insight to predict every movement. He buys just enough time for All Might to land a perfect blow. All Might sees this and realizes something very rare is happening. This kid fights with the heart of someone who refuses to freeze in fear, and this is why he chooses him as the next user of One For All. Training becomes completely different now. Deku already has strong reflexes and a prepared body. He understands how energy flows through muscles, and that makes him master small percentages of One For All early. He actually finishes the beach training months ahead of schedule, which understandably leaves All Might shocked. During the entrance exam, he finally earns villain points. When Uraraka is trapped by Fallen Rebel, he saves her with a controlled 20% jump that cracks the pavement but never breaks his bones. Recovery Girl is stunned because she's never seen a student control power like this on day 1. In UA, his growth is obvious. During Aizawa's class test, Deku studies the throw angle, the air resistance, and his own strength. He lands in the middle of the rankings, which surprises the entire class, and Aizawa can tell there's something special about it. For the next few weeks, Deku kept studying, writing notes, and improving his work, and All Might, newly assigned as a teacher, supported his development. At the USJ incident, Insight becomes the absolute MVP. Deku senses strange movements from the air right before Kurogiri fully opens a portal. He shouts a warning and gives Aizawa a few precious seconds to react. In the ship zone, he reads the enemy movements and guides Tsuyu and Mineta through the entire fight. When he rushes to save Aizawa from the Nomu, he stalls the creature long enough for All Might to arrive early. Because of this, Aizawa doesn't suffer brutal injuries like before, and of course, Almighty saves the day again. Then comes the sports festival where Deku becomes a rising star. He wins the obstacle race with a mix of clever timing and quick bursts of One For All. In the cavalry match, he analyzes every team around him and predicts their moves. Against Todoroki, he reads every ice formation and answers it with 8% power. His speech about Todoroki's fire still cuts through his emotional walls, but this time, Deku wins the fight. He stands with the gold medal around his neck while All Might watches with pride in his eyes. But every time he used the quirk, something felt off. But every time, he chooses to ignore it. During internships, Gran Torino trains him to use the insight together with full cowling. This lets Deku predict quirk movement in ways even All Might couldn't. And this helps him during the Stain encounter. Deku warns Ida about the blood trick, and they're able to defeat Stain with much less risk or injury. At this point, Izuku was still discovering the limits of his powers, experimenting with new ways to use them during every training session at the camp. For the first time, he felt like he was truly understanding how his body and his quirk could work together. Days went by with him testing movements, recording every detail in his notes, and slowly turning instinct into technique. But all of that progress is put to the test when everything changes again. Deku senses Muscular approaching long before the villain ever comes into view. The warning pulls him through his spidey sense. Without hesitation, he rushes towards Koda's location and moves the fight far away from the child, making sure he has no chance of getting caught in the crossfire. He then proceeds to defeat Muscular with controlled strikes between 20 and 30%. No shattered bones or desperate gamble. And most importantly, Deku keeps the class together and prevents Bakugo from being captured. So since Bakugo is never kidnapped, the Kamino fight shifts completely. All Might still clashes with All For One, but this time Deku has already warned the heroes, and Endeavor arrives to support him. With better coordination, All Might lands his final punch much earlier and retires with a small amount of One For All still left in him, keeping his life out of danger. But with All Might stepping back, Deku is suddenly pushed into his role far sooner. The pressure shakes him, and Meteor becomes the one who helps him manage the weight and anxiety of becoming the next symbol. During one of their joint missions, they encounter Eri with Overhaul. Instantly, Deku's spidey sense picks up the wrongness of the situation, sensing her fear and Overhaul's intentions. But he holds back, waiting for a clear signal before making a move. Later, Deku reports everything to Night Eye early, and this time, instead of waiting around, they actually move straight in. The rate on Overhaul becomes cleaner and faster. And during the fight, Deku's insight triggers an early awakening of Black Whip. When Overhaul tries to fire the quick erasing bullet, Deku lashes out instantly and yanks the gun from his hand before it can go off. Because of that one action, the entire outcome shifts. Meteor is able to keep his quirk, and Night Eye survives the mission without fatal injuries. As for Eri, she goes to UA till she's safe. By the time the Paranormal Liberation War begins, Deku's actually capable of sensing Shigaraki's awakening moments before the decay wave even starts. His warning gives Aizawa just enough time to erase decay on the spot, saving thousands of lives. Midnight and Gran Torino survive, and for the first time in a long while, the heroes fight as a unified front against a desperate, scattered force. But amidst all this, Deku starts noticing something strange. His heart keeps beating too fast and too hard. Every time he pushes his quirk, he brushes it off, convincing himself it's just the joy of saving Shigaraki and preventing another tragedy, unaware of what it truly means. But Shigaraki was far from done, and the final war was still on its way. In the final battle, Deku steps into the field as the fully realized successor of One For All. Every quirk inside him works in perfect rhythm. Black Whip, Float, Danger Sense, and Gear Shift all layer over each other perfectly and syncing effortlessly with his insight. For the first time, it feels like he's using multiple powers and more like they're all different pieces of the same instinct. Moving faster than anyone can track, Deku pushes through Shigaraki's defenses and reaches Tenko's heart far earlier than he ever did in the original timeline. He calls out to the boy buried under all of that hate, and this time, his voice breaks through. Tenko responds. The hold All For One had over him begins to crumble. With Shigaraki's will separating from All For One's influence, the villain loses the overwhelming pressure that made him unstoppable. The hero sees that opening. Working together as a single force, they overwhelm All For One completely and bring the fight to a definitive end, ending the villain's reign once and for all. And the future becomes brighter. Meteor keeps his power. All Might teaches at UA without fear of dying. Eddie grows up joyful and safe. The students of Class 1A graduate without the losses that originally shaped them. Deku stands as the new #1 hero. Bakugo becomes #2, and Todoroki rises high as well. With All For One finally defeated and Shigaraki freed from his control, the world slowly enters a new age of peace. In the months after the final battle, things begin to change at a pace no one expected. Villain activity drops across the nation because the symbol of fear is gone. Families who once lived in constant panic can finally breathe. Schools reopen, cities rebuild, people smile again. But even in this better world, Deku senses something heavy inside himself. The price of rewriting fate was not small. Deku begins to notice that One For All behaves differently inside him now. In the original timeline, he pushed the quirk until the very brink of collapse. In this timeline, he used it carefully, wisely, and with strong support. But even so, the power inside him grows restless. He tries not to show this to anyone, especially All Might. After all, the retired hero finally leaves peacefully. His health has improved. He smiles more often. He can enjoy teaching and guiding the next generation without fear of dying tomorrow. Deku refuses to worry about him. Class 1A, meanwhile, moves forward with their hero careers. Bakugo rises through the ranks with explosive speed, always yelling that he will not let Deku run too far ahead. Todoroki takes on difficult missions to repay the world for everything his family did. Meteor becomes the hero people once believed All Might's successor would be. Everyone is living a better version of the life they deserve, but Deku begins hiding something important. In the original timeline, Deku used the quirk recklessly, which paradoxically protected him. The damage forced the power to spread evenly and burn itself away. But in this timeline, Deku mastered everything too early. He became too efficient, held onto it too much. His body is now carrying a level of stored energy that no human was ever meant to handle. Deku stands silently as they speak. His heart feels heavy. He asks them one question. How long do I have? The first user looks down. The fourth user explains that there's no exact number, but the strain is increasing each month. One for All will not kill him suddenly. It will slowly wear down his muscles, nerves, and eventually his core. If he keeps pushing himself as the #1 hero, his time will shorten even more. Deku doesn't cry. He simply accepts the truth, because even knowing this, he would still do everything the same way, even if it resulted in his death again and again. One evening, All Might visits Deku at the training field. Izuku is finishing rescue drills with first-year students, moving slower than usual but still pushing himself. All Might watches him closely and can tell something is wrong. Deku eventually explains the strain One For All has been putting in his body and how the warnings from the previous users have become harder to ignore. He pushes too far and collapses. He survives, but the damage forces him to retirement. News of this incident spreads quickly, and the country reacts with shock. But Deku stays calm. His friends gather around him in the hospital and remain by his side until he recovers enough to move on with a quieter life. Deku spends his remaining years teaching at UA. He can't fight anymore, of course, but he trains students with the same focus he once used in battle. The world remains safe, supported by the heroes he trained, and Deku watches from the background, knowing they are ready to handle whatever comes next.